Ah, petrol and sunshine. What more does a growing boy need? What is happening, boys? Spectre here, back for our first video in 2024. It's currently March, so yeah, this year's gone great. Like I say, I've not made a video since December. The reason being, it has rained almost every day since then. It's been so wet. I've been so sick of it, man. Oh my god, just sat inside watching it rain and rain and rain, and on like the one rare day when it's not raining, your roads are soaking wet and covered in shite and slush, and oh my god, it's been miserable, man. Even today, like, it's supposed to be blue sky sunshine today. It's actually quite misty. It's only just sort of opened up. But even this, like, I should be in work right now. The only reason I'm not in work is I have taken some time to go and get my tyres fitted. Not on this, but on my Honda CG125. For those of you not on my Instagram, I've got a Honda CG125 as well. It's a 1999, and it's my first ever motorcycle when I was 17. But I had a scooter when I was 16, and then I turned 17, CBT let me have a 125, and I bought my Honda CG. It wasn't exactly pristine. I'm going to have to open the visor a bit here. I'm fogging up slightly. Apologies about the noise for having that open. My Honda CG's been sat in storage at my parents' house for about 9 years, 9 and a bit years. So I went and saved it. Actually picked it up in my Kangoo. I still got my Renault Kangoo. Managed to fit it in the back just about, which was great. I'm actually slowly getting it back on the road. I've given it an oil change, oil filter, air filter, battery spark plugs, some other little bits, and it's running. It runs, it rides. It doesn't stop very well, but it stops kind of. Currently I've taken the wheels off it. They're in getting tyres fitted, and let's go this way, get away from these cars. Yeah, it's gonna be great, and then it probably doesn't need a great deal after that before I can get it back on the road. And I am still considering whether or not to actually get it all the way back. I was planning to get a second bike always alongside the Magna, but I wanted it to be bigger, really. I wanted it to be bigger and faster and a bit more competent than the CG is. The CG, as much as I love it, is extremely slow, particularly with my fat ass on it. But we'll see how it goes. I will introduce you to that bike once I can. I've not filmed the like, rebuild stuff, partly because I'm not very good at it, so I didn't think it'd be of any value to anyone. But also just because it's a bit difficult to film. What with me having no face and no personal details, it's a bit tricky filming at home, and then I'd either have to wear the camera or try and blur my face. So I'm documenting it slowly on Instagram stories, and that's about as much as I get. And then when it's back on the road, then it will appear on this channel. While the wheels are in getting tyres, the guy said come back in a few hours, so I thought I'd nip out on the Magna. And with all of that update stuff, oh, any other updates? Yeah, I passed my probation at work. That's all going really well. Everything's cushy there, so yeah, life's actually going quite well. Like, you know, there are still some dramas on the go. I think there always will be. It's with life, isn't it? But in general terms, life's doing pretty good, and I'm really looking forward to this summer. Once this spell of rain and crap goes away, I can't wait to get out and properly ride this summer. Properly, like I was saying in the last video, like explore Cornwall, you know, get out on a bike, give myself excuses to get out, force myself to get out but I don't really want to, and just generally make some sort of strident steps, really. So yeah, everything is good, everything is hunky-dory in the Spectre camp. But I did actually have a topic for today. Look at that, beautiful. Someone's got their fire going, we love that. Kind of partially related, hello, to that. The title I'm going to give this video is Bikes Will Save the World, and what this is a discussion brought on by some of the recent changes to bike lineups in relation to emissions laws in the UK and Europe. So the most recent has been, you probably saw the R1 has been killed off, following most of the other 1000cc sports bikes, and it's now a long line of bikes that we don't get in this country. Along with things that I really want, like all of the Enduros, all of the 650, the DR 650, the XR 650 Honda. Great looking bikes. They suit this sort of road perfectly. They are built for it, and we don't get them, and it sucks. You get them in America, you get them in Australia, you get them all sorts of rest places, but not here, and I hate it. Following on from that theme is, I looked up the Honda CG for shits and gigs against ULEZ, and it is not ULEZ compliant. My 125cc, which gets a claimed 95 horsepower, according to MCN, is not ULEZ. If I lived in London, I'd have to pay £12.50 a day to leave the driveway with that. As a reminder, that's 6 months tax on a 125. It's just idiotic. So I want to have a little chat about that, because my opinion, as a biker, as a petrol head, but also as someone who cares about like the planet and the places that we live, is that ULEZ is a fucking stupid, and as our electric cars to a degree, we'll come back onto that, but the whole push of like, oh, everything needs to be electric, there'll be no more combustion motors sold after X day, everything's, you know, blah blah blah, which is also affecting bikes, I find really frustrating, because in my opinion the most polluting, the worst bike, you know, take the R1 for example, which is not anywhere close to the worst polluting bike, but the worst bike is still better for the planet overall than the best car. And what I mean by that is, currently everything's being judged on tailpipe emissions only, so CO2 and the various other particulates, but mainly the CO2 coming from your exhaust at point of contact, as it were, like behind you. I think that's a simplified, it's a too simplified version of the actual chain of events. You know, if I lived in London, for example, or anywhere with ULEZ, and I was commuting on this Magna, which is also not ULEZ, they would rather that I sell this and get a 3-ton electric SUV than continue to ride the bike. And the issue I have with that is, yes, you reduce the emissions from my exhaust by removing them, but the emissions for the planet go up exponentially, because the cost of materials to build a car, particularly as every car is an SUV nowadays, you know, a 2-3 ton SUV takes so much material cost, resources and pollution to build. If it's electric, you have to go out and mine a bunch of lithium and tear the ground up for that. You then build the car in Thailand or Malaysia or wherever the plant happens to be, ship 3 tons of vehicle halfway across the world to the central depot for Hyundai or Ford or, you know, whatever the brand is. Then you ship it from wherever that is in the middle of Europe generally across to England to the docks on a boat, and then you ship it from there into sorry, I'm riding like a pussy because I've not, like I say, this is the second time I've ridden this bike all year, so yeah, forgive my dodgy paranoid braking and cornering, but yeah, like you ship it all the way across there, then you have to get it on a transporter and ship it from the docks to the dealership, and then you can sell it. And I truly and genuinely believe I could ride this bike, 1995 bike, for the rest of its mechanical life, and the pollution from my exhaust will not overtake the pollution one of those big electric SUVs has caused the world before it has even left the forecourt. I haven't got any figures to back that up. I was going to look it up, I did try. Unfortunately, no one lists the information. Nobody has the combined CO2 for production of the vehicle and shipping and transport and everything. So it's a hard thing to verify, but just, yeah, think about it. Like, the material cost of it is so much bigger, and there is no silver bullet for climate change and pollution, but bikes would buy us so much time. If all of your like single occupant car drivers commuting in cities had bikes instead of cars, as they do in, you know, Asia and, like, you know, all across the world, just think of the material cost. Think how many like Honda PCX 125 scooters you can make from the same amount of metal as one car. And even eco cars are not that eco. You look at like my first car, a Renault Twingo hatchback, great car by the way, loved that thing, 1.2 litre petrol, naturally aspirated, it got about 55 miles per gallon real world. By comparison, this motorcycle, which is not in any way built to be eco, it's heavy and it's performance for its time, and it's a V4, this gets 50 miles per gallon, so you're getting no better than a 30-year-old muscle bike. and like I say, the Honda CG gets double that, and a lot of modern ones, like the Honda Monkey, like I was watching Sam Vincent's review, his 1 year ownership review, he's getting 130 miles per gallon in that thing. Thank you. Cheers, buddy. Love it. And 40. Oh dear. The best bikes these days in terms of efficiency, miles per gallon, fuel usage and everything are miles ahead of the most pretentious, like, asswipe, you know, Toyota Prius and similar type cars. The damaging cost of making the new EVs is so high that it doesn't matter they've got zero emissions at point of contact, because God, this road has deteriorated. Good grief. It doesn't really matter because they've caused so much harm just being made. No one drives far enough to undo it, but particularly in this country. If you've seen the average miles a person does in this country, I'm going to put it on screen because I don't remember it, but it's really, really low for your average driver. There are obviously exceptions to that rule, but in terms of the majority of people, it's really, really low. And there are wider benefits of bikes than just emissions. So one of the biggest issues electric vehicles have is you need to have a driveway or they just don't work. You need to be able to charge it overnight, otherwise the entire point of them falls apart. Because charging takes ages, and it will continue to take ages for probably a decade. The technology doesn't exist properly yet. It's improving, and they are making good progress, big strides in terms of how fast you can get rapid charge from, you know, the other type of type of connector, which can do like 20 to 80 in 45 minutes or something like that on a lot of these cars. But that's still too long. Me going from 20 to 80 on petrol takes me like a minute and a half. I spend longer looking at the Snickers bars than I do putting petrol in the thing. That's kind of the issue with it. Like, if you imagine your commute, I mean, commuting sucks anyway. We'll come on to that in a minute as well. But imagine if your commute is an hour each way, and now suddenly you've got to chuck a 45-minute delay in. Depending how long your commute is, and maybe get away with like twice a week, like maybe like a Monday, a Wednesday, Friday, or like a Tuesday, Thursday, or whatever. But you're talking like 45 minutes charge time, and that's if the charger is empty when you get there, which they're normally not, because again, everyone needs 45 minutes. So you end up sitting in a queue for ages. Yeah, it's just unworkable. But the problem is most people don't have a driveway, because particularly working class people, who are the people suffering most under the current emission changes to driving, most people don't have driveways, and most people don't even get to park outside their house, you know? You think about like your average street, your average working class terrace street, Victorian terrace street, you're lucky if you can get a parking space on the street. When I was living at my previous place in Plymouth, I got to the point where I didn't want to use my car because I knew that every time I left there would be nowhere to come back to, and that really started to piss me off, because then I'd have to park, you know, 3 streets away, and then the people from that street get pissy at you because you're taking up spaces on their street, you don't even live there, and you get your car vandalised. And I had my car keyed outside my own house, and also I lived in a bit of a shit neighbourhood, which got progressively shitter the further away you went. So the further from home I have to park, the more likely it is that I'm going to get my, you know, windows put in. I've no idea where the fuck I am, by the way, at all. Nobody has space for a car, an electric car certainly. It's difficult to have space for an ordinary car, but most people do have space for a motorcycle. Most of these, like even these crappy little terrace houses, they often have a little yard-ish in front of the house where you put your wheelie bins, or they'll have a little garden at the back, or they'll have, you know, there's a little, you could find space to put a bike somewhere. And you can solve a lot of the issues of like overparking, overcrowding, inefficient suburbs if a lot of people had bikes. Not even a lot, if you're 20% or 25% for mass sake, let's say a quarter of people who currently drive around single occupant cars, if a quarter of them have a bike instead, think how much more space there would be everywhere. And then that continues as well. You get to work and there's a quarter more parking spaces in your work car park. There's a quarter less cars in front of you in the queue in traffic, and that means that you, even if you don't ride a bike, you get to where you're going quicker because there's less people in front of you. You get a better miles per gallon because your car can run more efficiently, because you're not constantly doing stop-start traffic. You're doing a little bit more, you know, you can drive from light to light rather than shuffling the whole way. You can solve so many problems, like inner city parking. There's no parking spaces in the city centre, which is why every city centre is dead. Bikes solve a lot of problems for us. Now, I'll be the first to admit that bikes suck in the winter. They're not pleasant. I did it, you know, my first 7 years I only had a motorcycle, I didn't have a car, and it's fine, you can do it, you know, or you can do it in the south. When you go up north and it starts getting snowy and icy, then you run into issues, and that's where some of this starts to fall down a little bit. But even then, like I've said, the best garage is a car and a bike, and you can solve a lot of problems and efficiencies by having a bike even some of the year. And when you live somewhere like London, where it's kind of generally pretty warm the whole time because it's a city, the fuck are you doing? Okay, you just hanging out, or have you Land Rovered yourself? Where are you? Stop putting it in reverse and go. What are you doing, man? Look at the size of that hay bale. Can't wait for that to fall off and kill me. There are ways you can stay dry in winter. We could adopt more covered bikes. Like the only one we really got in terms of having a roof and a windscreen is the BMW C1. But in like Asia and Japan and places like this, they had a lot of models actually. I've recently been watching this guy doing Deliveroo in Tokyo, and he rides this lovely little I think it's a Yamaha. Okay, I think it's a Yamaha, and it's got like a screen over the top, and you know, he's perfectly dry, and he's riding around in the rain, and he's not too soaking wet. It's not too bad. And people do ride in the rain all the time. Again, Sam Vincent, I mentioned earlier, he rides all year on his KTM Super Adventure, and generally just yobs about the place. But yeah, the point of it all is, I truly believe we're dealing with the real problem, which is pollution and climate change and the damage we're doing to the planet. But the way we're going about it feels a lot more like you're just trying to price working class people out of personal vehicle ownership, and societally that's an awful thing. A, your quality of life is crap without a vehicle, and B, it's important for just like the world that all of society is able to be in control of its own transit. Like that's such a basic right. Just being able to go, I want to go here, and get yourself there without being beholden to whoever's in control of the public transport. If you need to go somewhere that you can't get to, for example, I live out in the countryside, there are no public transports to anywhere close to me. If you need to get stuff cheaply, food, you know, furniture, anything, like all of the cheap stuff and the ways to save money require the ability to get to them. You need a car to go and collect stuff. All of the free days out, I mean, the issue I had when I was a kid is my dad passed away when I was a kid, and he was the only driver in our household. My mum didn't drive, thank fuck, because she's a bit of an idiot. But for the entirety of my teenage years, I did nothing. I genuinely mean that, nothing. I had no hobbies, I didn't go anywhere, I didn't do anything, I didn't leave the house. All of the places you can get to on buses are really expensive for days out, and we couldn't afford it because we were poor. But all of the places that are free, you know, beaches, Dartmoor, all of these beautiful like, outside walks, all of these beautiful places, you need to get a car to get to them. And no one should be forced into that because they cannot afford their own vehicle. They certainly should be forced into it if they're like a working professional in a city and they just can't afford the ridiculous asking price for an electric vehicle, but they also can't afford the running costs of like a petrol or diesel. So I think we're going about it the wrong way. And to be honest, I think we're going about it the wrong way intentionally. I think it's a willful misconstruing of the problem because the government are assholes, basically, and because it benefits them. They're fine, they can afford a nice car, they can afford to go and get an electric car and have their nice fancy driveways and, you know, charge at home, and they're not having to drive to work every day for a start. It worries me, and I think a lot of it could be solved by bikes, but the government overlooks them. Every time there's a transport budget, every time there's, you know, restrictions like ULEZ, like if bikes were exempt from ULEZ, all of these great bikes that have been destroyed or sold off or flogged that are not worth anything now, they'd be perfectly fine, and they're still saving the world by being a bike. And that brings on to another issue with things like ULEZ and these kind of scrappage schemes, is the waste, the throwaway nature of our society at the moment. You have a perfectly good car, say you've got, I don't know, a 2010 Passat petrol, and it's not ULEZ, VW Passat, and you're like, okay, instead of, this car's perfectly good, the engine is fine, it runs, it's maybe not as efficient as a modern engine, but it runs. The bodywork is perfect, the interior is perfect, the suspension, the running gear, the tyres, everything is perfect. We're going to throw it away. We're going to throw it away and recycle, you know, like 15% of it, whatever gets actually recycled from these places, then go out and buy a whole new car, construct a whole new car just to upgrade the engine. What a stupid way of living. I mean, we've done it before. We had a scrappage scheme in, was it 2009, the last big like main scrappage scheme, where we lost all of the great 90s cars, all of the Escorts and Mondeos and all of these like perfectly good, brilliant cars that are now worth good money because they're rare. Just threw them away, and that's not how you save the planet. Reduce, reuse, recycle. Like, recycle is the last choice, and then replace comes after that. But it can't be, let's start by throwing it away and buying a new one, because that's just ridiculous. People should not be penalised with expensive tax and stuff because their car is old. Yes, it is polluting a little bit more, but it's old. They're keeping a car on the road when they could be throwing it away and wasting it. Like, that should be rewarded. That should be applauded. A bike like this bike is almost 30 years old. My Honda CG is 25 years old. Both of them are on, well, this one's on the road, this one's going to be on the road. Both of them are fine. You know, my car, my van's not ULEZ, not even close to ULEZ. That's a 2008. The idea that every 2-3 years your PCP runs out and you scrap and waste your car and get a new one, it's just barbaric to me. It kind of relates to, remember that video I made a little while back where I was talking about people buying the same bike twice, like every couple of years they replace the bike with the same bike. That's exactly the same principle. That's people just throwing away and wasting resources for nothing. What I would love to see, really, VW and Renault and Ford and all these companies start selling crate motors. So in the same way, you know, it happens in America, you can go out and you can buy just a V8. I can go out and buy a Hellcat V8 and it will just arrive in a crate and then you put it in whatever you want to put it in. I want them to start doing that with mundane engines. So, you know, say you're a matey boy with the VW Passat that I mentioned earlier. Your Passat is perfectly good, but the engine is not ULEZ anymore. Be able to buy from Volkswagen a 2024 petrol motor. Nothing fancy, just like a little, you know, 1.5, whatever, 3-cylinder, just an engine. You go to Volkswagen, you say, I want to buy, you know, this engine. You give them the engine code, and you go, I've got this car, and they go, okay mate, here's a bracket kit for that model, and you get a conversion kit for the engine to go onto the stock engine mount, like bolt holes, and you get a conversion kit for the gearbox, and, you know, maybe a wiring loom conversion kit if you need it. And then you can just take your car to any decent mechanic, or Volkswagen could do it themselves, and you upgrade the part of the car that is the problem while maintaining the rest of it. And then suddenly you've got a 2010 Passat, but it's got a 2024 motor in it, and it's, you know, Euro 7, and it's got all of this. You've got stop-start technology, and you've got all of this stuff. And your miles per gallon is great, and your emissions for the tailpipe are low, and instead of buying a whole car, you've just saved your car and given it another 10, 15, 20 years of real world practical use. And how much better would that be than what we're doing currently? But of course, Volkswagen don't want to sell you an engine, they want to sell you a car. So no one's ever going to do this unless they're made to by a government. And no government's ever going to make them, because no government really cares about us. And the ones that do care about the planet are anti-car as a result, and they think that that's the best way to improve the lives of people, and it just isn't. I don't particularly like electrics, but they do serve a purpose. You know, I like the efficiency, the silence, and you can imagine a city in the future where it's just like completely silent, or it would be if we can get rid of these stupid mandated sounds, like playing a noise in the speaker so that dumbasses don't walk out in front of you on their phone. And it is dumbasses as well. Like, people are always like, oh, it's for blind people, it's for such a, like, no, blind people are a lot smarter than we give them credit for. Blind people, like partially sighted people, deaf people, and all of these, like, they know how to navigate a city without walking into traffic. They're not the problem. The problem are able-bodied pedestrians who are just thick. But again, I don't think the way to do that is to make a bunch of big, heavy, massive electric cars. The way to do it, thank you, is to upgrade existing cars. Now, this is a concept it does exist. There's a company called English Electric Cars, or Electric Classic Cars, something like that. This classic car one, you take their classic car to them, and they'll take the engine out and take the drivetrain out and put electric motors, normally from Teslas, crash Teslas, and a bunch of batteries, and it all bolts in using the existing car. Like, it uses the chassis and the engine mount holes and all of the stuff already there. They just make conversions to bolt in, and then you've got a beautiful classic car, thank you, with electric underpinnings. And then you can charge it, you can fast charge it, it's quick, it's efficient, it's great, and you can keep the style of these stunning cars while making them bang up to date and practical. And they sell kits now, so you can go and you can buy a classic Mini Cooper kit, and you can buy a classic like Fiat 500 kit, and it is just like, it's a box with all the electronics and the brains and the batteries in. That bolts onto the engine brackets, and then you get a big battery pack that bolts into the fuel tank brackets. But it's just a kit, you just buy it and then do it yourself, and it's great. The issue is their conversions are like 100 grand, and that's not even counting restoring the car. That's just like converting, because they're like a group of guys in a shed doing it, and it's all small volume and expensive. That concept works, but again, it needs manufacturers to be doing it themselves for that to be commercially viable to ordinary people. And again, this can't be some expensive thing. This has to be cheaper than replacing the car, so that all the people who don't really care about the planet but do care about their wallet are incentivized to do this. You could take, like, I could take my Renault Kangoo and get like a modern engine in it, or get an electric conversion. That would be cool, and that would be like really usable. The waste goes from being an entire car being thrown away and scrapped to being an engine thrown away and scrapped, and even then you can save a lot of parts from it to keep other engines that are of the same type on the road. An engine block is just a lump of metal. Like, it's a lot easier to recycle an engine than it is the rest of the car. You can get a lot of that metal back out again. I think there are lots of ways that we can sort of save the world from ourselves without sacrificing our freedom of movement and freedom of personal vehicle ownership and freedom of enjoyment for things like this. Cars cannot become horses. They can't become an expensive hobby for toffs. They need to remain a cheap and usable method for people to live their lives. If we had bikes as a much bigger chunk of society in this country, we could really make some differences. And people who can't afford a car or don't have space for a car can afford a bike a lot of the time. They can get a little scooter, and you can get a little, you know, whatever. Like, it's cheap, and everything's cheap. I've been restoring this Honda CG, right, and the service kit, which was oil, 2 litres of oil, oil filter, air filter, spark plug, O-rings, all of the stuff you need to get it back on the road, which got it from sat for 9 years to running and moving around my driveway, was 26 quid. And the batch free was 17 quid. 125s are so cheap. The tyres that I put on are 28 quid a tyre, something stupid. 10 quid for the inner tube. And that's how we help the poor and the ordinary working people, who are the most important people in society, in my biased opinion. That's how we keep them moving. It's how we keep them from being left behind by the world that we're making. And it's so important, man. It's just such a vital thing for the good of all of us. I just want to round out, I appreciate I've been talking for a really long time. This is probably quite a long video. But I just want to round out by saying that there's a separate issue, which is air quality in inner cities. If you lived in a city, a big city near a main road, yeah, it's disgusting. Like, you get black snot on the tube, you get like a build-up of grime and soot on your windows and on your hires and your cars, and it's in your lungs and you're breathing it. And, you know, people have like asthma issues in cities that they then cure by just going to the countryside. It's not dissimilar from like wheeling your sickly Victorian wife out to Scarborough so she can have some fresh air that's not full of coal dust, you know. It's a very similar concept, but the way that you solve that issue is not the car. The car is not the problem there. The city as a concept is the problem there. And as I've mentioned a few times on this channel, I'm a remote worker. I work from home. I have been working from home for 4 years now, because I started about this time, actually. It was March 2020 when you know, the sea kicked off. It's great, and a lot of your inner city jobs can be remote. They were remote throughout the sea, demonstrably so, and it works, and it's fine, it's efficient, it's great. There was a study recently I saw, I'll link it if I can find it again, that said a remote worker's daily emissions compared to an office worker is a 58% reduction. 58%! If you've got half, even just half your workforce are remote, and the other half are still in the office because they like the socialising or they like the whatever, even just half your workforce and your company's emissions are down 58%. I mean, how many companies claim to have eco pledges, they claim to have efficient aircon at their offices, and they donate money to, you know, carbon offset charities and blah blah blah. This is how you actually help, and it's not just the world emissions, it's the inner city emissions are 58% lower because I'm not there with an exhaust making particulates. And remote work solves so much, and yeah, that's a separate, I'm actually going to make a separate video talking about remote work and why it works for me and how much I love it, so I don't want this video to go on any longer than it already has. So all I'll say from that is remote work is a great option, but even more than that, even if you still like offices and you still want a traditional office working environment, instead of having one massive city that everyone flocks to like idiots every morning, space people out, and you, instead of your company having 6 floors in one building, you have 6 floors in 6 different buildings scattered around the country. You know, you end up with a more diverse workforce because not everyone wants to move for a job, particularly nowadays, and you can use remote and hybrid and work from home together. Then you can have these little pop-ups, like if you want an office environment, you can go to a shared office space and your immediate social colleagues are not necessarily from your own company, they're from the other people you're sharing the space with. Or even if it is your own company, you get, you know, you find a hub that's equidistant between like 10, 15 of you, and you all go and work there, and that's your little office. And there's another little office for, you know, 100 miles away, there's another little office somewhere else. And instead of having these big lumps of pollution with everyone going to the same spot and everyone filling these places up with their cars and everyone making more pollution, you distribute the pollution across the world so that you don't get these big spikes from everyone being in one place at once. And in doing so, not only do you help inner city air quality, which helps inner city health and lifespan and so on, but you save all of these dying towns all around the country where nobody can afford to live because there's no work, and it's not on a commuter belt to London or Manchester or Birmingham or wherever your big office is. All of these cities are suddenly viable places to live, and you can get your cheap rent and your cheap houses, and you can get your cheap office space because you don't need to be in the central hub, and be a bit more imaginative about how these businesses are run, and then you can solve both pollution and the environment, but also like socio-economic issues and distribution of money, the balance of money in the British economy between London, which is this big like lump into the sort of the spread of our financial country, and then all the rest being relative poverty. Spread the money around, spread the people around, spread the infrastructure around, and everyone wins. And you get, you know, companies get more diverse workforces, they get more intelligent workforces because they can hire the best people in the country instead of the best people who happen to live 20 minutes from their office, and nobody is. The reason for it ultimately is twofold. One, people don't trust their employees, that's on you for hiring them, and two, companies have invested billions of pounds in commercial real estate, and frankly that's not our problem, that's their problem, and they could deal with the fallout from that. It's a weird world we live in, and I worry for the future. As a petrol head, I worry for the future of being able to ride bikes like this and drive cars I want and enjoy my life. When you add on top of that we're not solving the problem we're pretending we're solving either, it's really frustrating. So yeah, like I said, I've been talking for probably half an hour now, if not longer. I'll give you a quick TLDR wrap up, which is the material cost to make a bike is 1/10 of a bigger SUV. They are more efficient to make, they're more efficient to buy and run, they take up less space, they're better for working class people, they're better for anyone who lives in the cities, they improve the life of people who aren't even riding them just by existing. Inner cities flow better, traffic flows better, and the way that you save the planet is to focus on the bigger picture, not the localised ULEZ small picture, and the way you save the city is by killing it and replacing it with a bunch of towns. And that's how we save the world, and that's how we move forward, and that's how we continue to have the quality of life that we've enjoyed without it killing the rest of us, you know. Well, that's my 10 pence, which I appreciate. It's more like 10 pounds with the amount of time I've been talking. So I'm going to wrap up there. Thank you very much for watching, folks. If you have watched this far, which I doubt anyone will, because my view time is very low anyway. But thank you very much, guys. I hope you're all well. I hope you had a good Christmas. I hope you've had a good New Year. I hope you're looking forward to summer too. So let's get through the winter and the rain and make this happen, yeah? Alright, good videos to come and less preachy videos to come. Alright, have a good one. Ride safe. Spectre out.